I'm super excited to be here, in large part because it's the events like these, as so many speakers have commented on, that give us the opportunity to learn, to connect, and to rise each other up and really push ourselves to comfort zones that we might not go on our own. So what I wanted to talk about today, this is a cruise vehicle in my neighborhood. I live in San Francisco. There's no driver. No driver. The first few times I drove my bike or rode my bike through Golden Gate Park, I was like, oh my God, is that thing gonna hit me? Now, it's fine, it's fine. But the purpose of my talk today in this context of the time is now is really threefold. First, technology is advancing at a pace that we've never seen, and I want to unpack that a little bit and talk about why that is. But even more importantly, I want to talk about why I hope all of you not only lean more into tech, but reach up higher and pull your friends up and push each other up higher, because it's never been more important than now to have diversity around the tables, and to have diversity building the tech, and to have diversity making the hard value decisions. But then the real guts of this is we all tell you to do that, and people told me to do that, and then how do you do that? And I think there's been some great tips and tricks that have been shared over the last day and a half, and I'm going to add my piece to that story that hopefully will bring some insight and be helpful to you as it's been helpful to me. So that's the goal. So with that, a brief history, and I'm an ex-consultant, haven't done PowerPoint in a long time, so you're getting the best I can do. But basically, the reality with technology is if you look at the time frames on the bottom, we're seeing the cycle time between these major technological advancements shrinking. And that's what I would call was the first big wave of technology advancement. It was new technologies coming out at a more and more rapid pace. But then what started to happen is technology moved from the back office into being the business, into being our social lives. We started to digitize everything. And so all of a sudden we're calling our taxis, which is really a shared ride on our phone. That's how we're making our hotel reservations. We're using Facebook, I still call it Twitter. But we're digitizing everything. We're digitizing our engagements. We're creating all this wealth of information. And the reason that we're seeing so much acceleration now with AI and autonomous is because of that foundation. We wouldn't have Gen AI models that work, large language models, if we didn't have the internet to train it on. We wouldn't have Gen AI if we didn't have the cloud computing power. And so it's the integration of these different technologies that gives us the power that we have today and is going to see us continuing to accelerate what we can do. Now, what's interesting is when we talk about technology, the media often talks about the consumer. And so it's ChatGPT, it's Facebook, it's these consumer ways of interacting. And I've spent my life in the enterprise space. So I want to start with a little bit of hopefully some interesting and fun ways to look at how this intersection of technologies has created new ways to approach how businesses get their work done. So this is, I used to work for a drone analytics company. I used to be the CEO. And what you see on the screen is actually what we would create after we would fly a drone with a really good camera over, in this case, a mining site. And those little vertices that you see, what we basically did is we'd send the imagery up into the cloud. We'd create digital twins. We'd create basically bits and bytes that would tell us everything we needed to know about that image. And the reason that is important is that you can start to do new things. So what can you do? Well, we worked a lot with construction and mining sites. And this first example is measuring stockpiles. Doesn't sound that sexy. It's not. But it is very dangerous and it's very time consuming. because people used to have to climb up these stockpiles and physically measure them. And they would do that to figure out how much to pay somebody for how much material was dropped off, how much to charge somebody for how much was taken. We worked with one diamond mine in Africa that caught a bunch of fraud that was going on because people were fudging the paperwork. But we could do in minutes what it took people weeks to do, and we could do it more accurately. Another thing, safety. So I learned this, I thought this was crazy. So there's rules around the heights of safety walls in mine and construction sites. And what they would do is they would drive a pickup truck with a bar out the back, and they would see if the wall was higher or lower than the bar. That is not wildly efficient. What we could do is we could actually just measure that in the cloud. And we could give you color codes, and we could show you where you were compliant. We could give you logs so you could pass that on to the authorities to prove what you were doing. And this final one, efficiency, Caterpillar was a big partner of ours. And what I learned is they have a lot of telemetry on the machinery, and they know at what grade of the haul road the machines are most efficient. They know at what curvature of the road that the trucks are the safest based on what the weather conditions are. And so all of a sudden, because we can fly this drone and we can take images and we can put those up in the cloud, and then we can use machine learning and AI to auto-segment, we can unlock all of these different capabilities that not only make us more efficient, but it makes us safer. Some examples, and they're embarrassing, but some examples of how things go wrong when you don't have diversity, and you all may know these stories, but I remember how shocked I was when I found out that the original seatbelts caused a lot of injury and potential death if you weren't an average size male. And that's because the team that originally built seatbelts built it for people like them. And that's who was building it. There's countless stories in terms of medications that, don't have the right dosage for different populations with different characteristics. During COVID, many of you probably saw that the oxygen readers didn't work based on the color of your skin. Or if you had a tattoo. I worked with somebody with a tattoo, his Apple Watch didn't work. So we have to think about these things, and it's hard sometimes to think about these things when you don't have people around the table asking the questions. Or what about the value judgments? What should we be able to do with AI or not? We need those diverse perspectives around the table. And because I don't want life to be all doom and gloom, this is a story, and it's a little bit dated, but when we have different people thinking about technology, they think about different possibilities. This was a team that realized that getting access to clean water in Africa in some small villages was really challenging. And what they did is they set up a series of sensors on the water pump so that they could predict when something was going to break, so they could proactively fix it. So these folks didn't have to wait for the pump to break and then wait weeks and weeks to get the right parts to fix it. And that's the power of what we bring when we think about what are the problems that should be solved and how to solve them and how to innovate. And so I love technology. I've worked in technology for over 30 years. But it hasn't always been easy. And we've heard a lot of that today. And I want to share a little bit about my career journey and some of the lessons I picked up along the way. But really importantly, the most important tool that I was gifted as I've gone on my journey. But before we go there, I want you to think for a moment. When you were a little kid, what did you want to be when you grow up? Do you remember? Did you have dreams when you were a little kid, what you wanted to be? I asked this because I had this question I did an interview, and this woman was like, yeah, did you dream of being a CEO when you were a little girl? It's like, what? I'm like, I was born in '68. Like, I don't know. I think maybe an airline stewardess. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't dream about being a CEO. In fact, I actually never aspired to be a CEO. I kind of got pushed into that role and then found out I loved it. But I want to talk a little bit about how did I get to where I am? Because my guess is we all started off on our career paths in a very similar manner. Work hard and show promise. I worked hard from a very, very young age. I just I loved school. I was teacher's pet. My 3 kids, my youngest is just like me, total teacher's pet, always want, pick me, I have the answer. I studied till 3 a.m., I know what the answer is, pick me. Don't pick the kid. Literally, my 15-year-old daughter last night at the dinner table was complaining that her Algebra 2 teacher always picks the boys in class and never picks her to answer. She's like, I know the answer. He didn't even know the answer. I knew the answer. He didn't pick me. And then her twin brother's like, you what? Crazy. But so you work hard. And working hard got me really far. I graduated high school at 16. I went to college. I started off as a software engineer. I went back to business school. I was a strategy consultant. I was always one of the early promotes. I was going, and then boom. I didn't get promoted to partner. I was devastated. I did everything they said. I checked every box. I brought in the revenue, I had the client relationships, I had everything. Why didn't I get promoted? So I was talking to one of the executives, and they explained a very important concept to me. It's called business need. And the challenge is, as you rise up in an organization, there are fewer positions at the top than there are capable individuals. And so what some of us think of as politics is really the system by which we sort out with the few number of spots we have at the top, and when we have more qualified people than spots, we go with people we know and trust. I was pretty upset by that, because I'm like, you didn't tell me that was on the list of things. So now I had a new thing I had to do. I had to figure out how to network and how to ask for help. And it took me a while, because I went to dinner last night with some of the wonderful folks here. I'm an introvert. And at this point in my career, I'm a partner at Accenture. I did become a partner. And I'm working hard. I'm a single mom. I have 3 young kids. I'm an introvert by nature. Like, when am I going to go network? I mean, how many early morning breakfasts and weekend things? And I'm like, no. Like, one of my friends is like, Yvonne, I bet you eat your lunch at your desk. I'm like, yeah, I am that hardworking. He's like, oh my God. He's like, you're worse than I thought. Let me introduce you to some headhunters. I'm like, why would you do that? He's like, oh my God, you don't get it. He goes, you build relationships with headhunters. You don't just answer the random phone call that comes in. These are the people who know how the ecosystem works. They're your friends. Pick who you want to engage with. And oh, by the way, networking is part of your job. You're a vice president at a rapidly growing software company. You are expected to have a network. Those are your customers, those are your prospects, those are your partners. Those are the people you're gonna hire, those are the people who are gonna help you. You need to have a network. And so, one little tactical tip, because I'm a metrics-driven person, I set a goal for myself. I said, okay, every week I'm gonna rekindle a relationship with somebody I know and I haven't talked to in a while. And I did that this morning. One of the gentlemen I worked with at Accenture, I saw him on LinkedIn. I haven't talked to him in like 10 years. I'm like, hey, Michael, we should catch up. Like, whether it's somebody you went to college with, it's a friend you haven't seen in a while, just you see a LinkedIn post, you see some tweet, whatever, be like, hey, I just say hi. Just say hi. No expectation, just hi. Let's catch up. Let's see what you're doing. And then meet somebody new. And I've had people say, well, Yvonne, how am I going to meet somebody new every week? I'm like, you ask. If you don't know who to meet, ask me. I'll introduce you to somebody. Because everybody loves to talk about themselves. Look at me. I'm up here talking about myself. There's 1,000. I could be doing laundry. I could be going for a run. But no, I want to talk about myself. So just kind of like, hey, I am so impressed with your career. Would you spend just 5 minutes with me sharing a little bit? And you know what? It may go nowhere. And then in 5 years, it may really go somewhere. And what's beautiful about time, there's a lot of things about aging that's not beautiful, but what's beautiful about time is I'm 55. Like, I can look back on my career and be like, wow. Like, looking forward, that seemed like really long time horizons, but looking back, when I look at where like that other, coder is, like they're now, a head of product there, and they're now this person there, and they're now this person there. So spend the time and ask for help. I tell people asking for help is a sign of strength. Now, if you ask for help, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel, if you ask for help on the same thing 2 times in a row, probably not good. But don't reinvent the wheel. Ask for help, network, those are good things. But that is not the big unlock. The big unlock is what I call leaning into opportunity, or what a lot of folks have mentioned, which is taking the risk. Taking the risk. It is so easy to say. It is so easy to say. It is very hard to do. So I'm going to give you a toolkit that's going to make this a lot easier. Now, how I stumbled on this toolkit is in this room. This is a real conference room. I took the picture with my iPhone. This is a pivotal moment in my entire life, because this toolkit I'm going to tell you about hasn't just impacted me professionally, but also personally. What happened is, my dear friend Andrew, who decided I was super pathetic when it came to networking, thought that I should get together with some other high-powered women. We'll just put you in a conference room on a Friday afternoon. And I don't really know why I said yes. He's kind of persuasive. And I don't think the other 3 women who showed up knew why they said yes. And so it's like 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and we're all sitting in this conference room kind of looking at each other because we don't really know why we're here. And fortunately, one of the women, she's an extrovert. I've known her for a long time at this point. She starts talking and she says, one of the things that I've observed is that our childhood really impacts how we grow up as leaders. And man, boy, did that set me up for success. My mother did this. My grandmother was the first female, bank commissioner. Like, I wasn't going to go be some Wall Street wife. Like, I was going to rule the world. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, wow. I'm like, you know what? You're right. Our childhoods really do impact how we grew up and what we do. I said, but my childhood story is so different. And like, my parents immigrated from Holland in 1960. I was born in 68. They got divorced when I was 4. My mom, unknowingly, remarried an abusive alcoholic. Things weren't that great, so I decided to get the hell out of Dodge. I graduated high school a year early. People thought I was smart. No, I just wanted to get out. I went as far away as I could in California, so I could still go to the UC system, but I didn't look back. I was not going to repeat what happened to my mother. I was not going to be dependent on anybody else. I was going to make myself safe. I have gotten to where I am because I have worked my butt off, because I am never going to be dependent on somebody else. I am going to be safe. And so I kept climbing and climbing and climbing, and this woman, Mary, she looks at me and she goes, that's great. She goes, you're a fear-driven person. I'm like, I'm what? She goes, you're a fear-driven person. I'm like, no. Did you hear me? I'm like, I had this abusive stepfather. I graduate early. I go to college. I'm an early promote. I run up the thing. And oh, by the way, you know what I didn't tell you? I didn't tell you my fiance passed away of cancer when I was 36. I went on to have 3 of his kids on my own. Those are my 3 beautiful kids I was just talking about. I did that all on my own. I was a partner. I've done. What do you mean I am fear-driven? She's like, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. You're fear-driven. It's fine. I was so pissed off. I'm like, okay, Andrew, whatever. So I could not get this out of my head. I was so angry. And the next day, I'm in my little car. I've got 3 kids in car seats. I think my twins were, they were under a year old. My oldest was 2.5 years older than that. I'm replaying this conversation. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, there is nothing this world can throw at me that I can't handle. Why can't this woman get that? There is nothing this world can throw at me that I can't handle. And I was like, oh my God. Why do I think the world is always trying to throw things at me? I was like, why? I actually heard an interview that they were talking about like Sam Walton, and apparently Sam Walton only imagined he would win. He was like some scrawny football player, but he always like, I'm gonna win. I'm like, that's not me. I'm gonna make sure we've got like all the first aid kits and everything else because somebody's gonna die. I don't know. So anyway, fortunately I had an exec coach, and I went into, I'm like, Jonathan, I'm like, I had this big aha, which is Mary, who you know, thinks I'm a fear-driven person. He's like, oh, tell me more. And this guy is not just an executive coach. He was like a neuroscientist. He'd been a therapist, like incredibly accomplished individual. So we get into this whole conversation. Well, what happened with your stepmother? For how long? He's like, well, no, she's right. You're fear-driven. But that's okay because you're not a victim. You're clearly a survivor. And I'm like, cool. And he goes, but wouldn't you like to be a thriver? And I'm like, what the hell's that? So anyway, so we're having this conversation, and he at one point makes this comment to me, which I just thought, literally, will it never end? This I thought was brilliant. He said to me, it is amazing how far you've come in spite of yourself. I'm like, okay, man, I am good. So what he meant by this, and I think it's really important, is that I spent most of my career hedging my bets. I spent most of my career being comfortable supporting somebody else because it was too risky to be on the main stage. It was too risky to be the lead character. I knew how to support somebody else, but I didn't know how to take the risk to be that somebody else. So here's where you want to take pictures and take notes, because here's how you get around this. The first thing is you have to sit in your fears. You really have, and when I sit in my fears, it does not take me long to get out on the sidewalk homeless. Like I literally can like subconsciously get there super quick. But then comes the fun part. Then you get to sit there and you get to imagine the possible. And he literally had me sitting in a chair. He's like, okay, now roll your shoulders back, deep breath. What if nobody could say no? What if everything went your way? What could you do? I just want you to sit with that. Like, what would be possible? And then, because you're super smart, I want you to figure out how realistic is that first scenario versus the second. And I'll give you a quick example of how this played out. When I became Chief Information Officer at New Relic, they didn't give me the job because everything was coming up roses. It was actually a disaster. They were trying to rip out a custom system. They tried twice, it failed twice. The business application team was quitting in droves. And so the night before the announcement, the chief people officer reached out to me and said, hey, Yvonne, do you want me to prepare some retention packages? And he almost fell over when I said, nah, I got this. He's like, what? Now, the old me would have said, of course I want retention packages. I have to mitigate my risk. They could all quit. If they all quit, then the company won't be able to function. If the company doesn't function, then I'm going to get fired and I'll never get another job because New Relic will have gone out of business, and that would be pretty bad. So yes, I want the retention packages. But no, what I did, I've been smart. I took Jonathan's advice, and I let myself go there, and then I said, okay, what if nobody quit? What if, because I'm pretty good with systems, because I used to write code and I used to do all this stuff, what if I actually helped the team do this, and then we could go on and do all these other things? What if I could do this? What if we could get there, and then we could change this, and then we could change that? And I got so excited. And so what I did is I told the chief people officer, I said, here's the deal. I said, I don't want to pay these people to stay. I want to tell them what my vision is. I want to help them see the opportunities of what we can do together. And my hope is that they're as excited about it as I am. But if they're not, I don't want them on my team. I don't want to waste my money. I want to hire people and pay people who want to win. And that's what we did. That's what we did. It was great. So I'm going to let you play around with this real quick. And I'm going to invite you to come with me. You're not in the gondola. Don't worry about that. But you are at a beautiful ski resort in Switzerland, and you're going to watch a ski jumping contest. Okay? You can win $1 million. It's good money. Maybe it's half of that after taxes, depending where you live. But it's good money. And it's super easy because there's only 2 jumpers. There's only 2. And it's even better. Just to keep me safe, there's blue and there's red. Blue is kind of like Simone Biles. Like, has never lost in their professional career. Amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And then red, man, so consistent, so good, so powerful. But you're going to have to choose. And I want you to all mentally choose. Okay. So they're going up the mountain. They get to the top of the mountain, and per tradition, the higher ranked skier always goes first, set the bar. And so we're there waiting, but there's a problem because blue had pulled up to the front of the edge. You saw them there, but then they started to move back. Wait, the announcers just said that they're actually going to have red go first. So if you want to change your bet, you can. If you want to keep it, go ahead and keep it. Okay. We're ready. Red is ready. Let's look and see how red did. That's a pretty cool jump. I cannot do that. Red did a pretty good job, pretty solid jump. And so now it's blue's turn. Blue comes to the edge. You see her? You see her on the edge? She goes over. You know, I think you go skiing, like you go over that edge, like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Is she starting to slow down? Did she start to slow down? Wait, she's on the jump. She's on the jump. Oh, that didn't go so well. That didn't go so well. Because you know why? She got a little scared. How does somebody who's like Simone Biles get scared? Well, she got scared because going up in this gondola, turns out that Red's not the nicest person in the world. Red and Blue used to practice together when they were kids. And Red just kind of happened to remind her about somebody getting really hurt doing a jump. I mean, it's all fair. Love and war. It's $1 million. People want to win. And what happened is, got in her own head. Got in her own head. I did hurt myself doing a ski jump, and I did exactly that. I was skiing down, and at the last minute, I just like, oh God, am I ready for this? And I started to slow down because I wasn't sure I was ready. And I ended up twisting my knee. I never did another ski jump again. I still ski, learned how to snowboard, but, and this is what we do in our careers. And it doesn't actually have to be somebody else who puts some restraining thought in your mind. Usually it's ourselves. And that's why it's so important. If Blue would have said, okay, yeah, of course I could hurt myself. But what if I didn't? What if I could go win all this money and give it to my favorite charity and do all these things? And let's face it, how likely is it that I'm going to go have this horrible thing happen to me? I'm Simone Biles. Like, I am the most amazing there's ever been. Why should I hedge? But I will say I have countlessly done it in my career. And I even use this today when I get scared. Like I feel myself start to hedge. And I'm like, okay, what am I afraid of? What if everything went well? And how do I lean into that risk? And so the organizers of this conference are super happy because my clock says 0, but that really was my last slide. Acknowledge your fears, dare to imagine the possible, and then lean into that opportunity. So thank you very much. Super high expectations. Have a wonderful rest of the conference. Dream.